Now as we open up into turn 4, we defined our commands. The English are able to keep all of this in command. 1, 2, 3, 4. So all their ships are in command. Likewise, the French are able to keep these guys in command, and I actually stretched down to this one. I could have gotten this one too. This is using the radius rather than a formation command. But I am making a formation command of these 3 ships and then of the tail end of the line. Just because, well, the question is, did I want this guy to move in the earlier segment? And I actually think I do. But unfortunately, I made that decision not to do that already, which may mean I shoot this segment before I fire that one. The French got the initiative, which is why they may want to. The problem is this stuff's all tangled up in a fight, and you kind of want to actually use those when they're in that kind of circumstance. So I may have made a mistake there. This English ship is a little chewed up, so if I sail through, maybe I can do enough damage to make up for these guys. But I should have triggered this guy into the fight as well. French pass-bys have been pretty effective. They've set this ship on fire. Both of these are vulnerable now. They've gotten a lot of firing on, they hit this one as well, I think, with this ship, which had to swing through. I've got one more ship in this command, this guy. Now, he's a problem. He's beating right now, which means he only has 3 movement points base, right? Or is it 2? It's only 2 movement points base. And he's -1, so he only has 1 movement point. I can't back sail with him. But I can tack or wear. I'm not allowed to collide with that ship or risk collision. So I've got to try to look at what my maneuvers are allowed here. And this is one of the things, until I get kind of used to these, I won't be manipulating my ships as effectively as I should be. Now what I want to do here, so let's see. He has movement points. I can't wear, but I could tack. I rotate on the stern to face directly into the wind. Okay, so this is what I must do in order to avoid a collision. I rotate on the stern into the wind, and now I go to the tacking table to see what happens. There's no commander. Rigging damage, I think I've got a -1 for that. And it is a damaged ship. It's on its damaged side. So that puts me to -2. There's an enemy nearby, up to -3. And we get a 0. We're in irons. Hey, it doesn't say in chains. Cool. Somebody had said it does. I believe I'm allowed to fire, though, even under these circumstances. Let me make sure of that. But certainly there's defensive fire that could come in at me as well. Okay, so ignoring, I took the defensive fire and I dropped, it's taken 10 hull hits. It only has 8 left, but it doesn't sink and it's still able to fire. Shit, I'm dripping. I can't move near the board because I'm dripping and I'm damaging my rolls. It's so fucking hot here. I gotta put something around my neck or something. Anyway, I'm gonna return fire with that ship. Now, it's not likely to do much. Another thing I wanted to point out, I had a leader loss check on him that didn't succeed. He's fine. Alright, I'll be back after I can wipe up some of this sweat. A little tricky is the command definitions, they've been severed essentially. This wouldn't be in command anymore, but it still is because command's only assigned at the beginning of the turn. They're gonna figure out what to do with the English. I'm pretty sure they're gonna move these guys. I'm having to violate one of my presets here, but I'm using the tripod because this is getting kind of dicey to deal with in any other way because of the maneuvering in this game. Luckily, I've got it focused on the game, so it's not too dangerous. So this particular ship I want to move. I'm going to pull his counters off temporarily. What he's going to do, he's got 5 movement points because the wind is blowing down this way. I can move the little wind marker to show you that, but I'll keep it back here. His first movement point is coming in here, 1, Now he swings for free, no, 2-3. Okay, and he's allowed to do this because he has enough movement to get 4-5 out of there. Now, what he's going to be doing is attempting an aft rake right there at point blank range. This is the first time we've seen it, and that's the Lancaster going starboard, which it's already fired. So I'll get him a little starboard broadside, and this isn't too bad, I guess, but and now I'll resolve that fire, and I'll come back in a moment after I've done so. Alright, I probably screwed up with the French. They chose to use their chase guns, and they managed to get a rigging hit, which isn't unlikely. But they could have done a partial broadside on the English ship, which might have done more. I think that's the broadside they have available. Yeah, they fired their port side, so they still had their starboard available. And now, for the rest of the English move, it can go 3, 4, and then it can swing with a free turn. By the way, I managed to get that aft rake, and I've done a total of 10 points of damage to a ship that can only take 9. Again, another floating disaster, as it were, at this point. It hasn't sunk yet. It's still an operable ship. English finish up the remainder of their movements sliding past and not firing over in this region here. The reason they're not firing, they fired their starboard side already. Hitting a destroyed ship, they'd be using their first fire from that broadside. They'd rather just let it founder. It's not really a threat anymore. This one, however, slid in, burning and all, and that's a penalty on its firepower. And, well, it basically took enough, I think, that it's sunk now, essentially. But it managed to do a hull hit against that French ship and eat up its first fire on its port broadside. Now we're on the French initiative again, and remember the French have a command right here as well as this rearmost command. The command here is kind of pinned down by this ship, and all the British ships are way up here, so it's got kind of a struggle to try to get into some kind of position where it can do any real damage. I'm going to try to look for some place I can go safely to try to protect these poor guys who are in a lot of danger from the main British line coming up in the rear. The English push their tail forward. One ship moved into range in order to fire. Minimal damage on the French. This one didn't get shot at all. I had to choose one ship to shoot at, but the two French fired back at it. Actually, initially going for rigging damage. They did a hit on the manpower. I'm not sure how to record the manpower. It doesn't give minuses, it just gives a number, so I'm treating them as positive values instead. So that's only one manpower hit, but 4 rigging hit, which will slow it down a little bit. Not too impressive overall. Remember, manpower can't go below 1. That leaves us with only 1 French force left, and I don't know what the hell happened here. I guess the wind caught some of my ships. The English were a little disturbed as well, but this guy was flipped over on top of that one. But I know what the ordering was. I don't really terribly want to close with the Brits directly. I want to form a second line again, because that seemed to at least provide me with some defensive capability. Now we're at the end of turn stage, where we have to worry about fires, drifting, striking, and sinking. Alright. Drifting is unfortunately not covered with the rest of these. But let's do the fire first. We have a fire on this one. We get a roll on the fire table. Somewhere here. And we roll an 8, which means we take a hull hit and an asterisk. The fire can spread to other ships, but really the only real effect, and this ship is already due to sink, is that she's burning to the ground there. Doesn't seem to be an exploded result. I'm seriously considering removing wrecks from the game. There are no wreck markers in this game. I can use other things. I may use the ground markers over here to indicate that a ship has been completely wrecked and it's just a capsized hulk kind of floating around. They seem like a pretty minor danger overall, but I like the appeal visually of imagining those ships kind of floating around as wrecks. All right, what about drifting? Well, where do we find things in these rules? And that's a tough thing. There is no phase separation of the turns. You know, so it doesn't handle drifting in with the other stuff that happens at that time. And that makes it more difficult for me to grasp the game. I don't know where that's going to be, but it does have this. 3.6.8. See what that's under. Maybe it's under movement. Wouldn't really make sense there because movement's voluntary movement. But let's see. There it is. And that is under movement, kind of at random. You move the ships with a wind during the drift segment. If the wind is calm. Okay, so which ships are drifting? Well, I don't think that's any. I don't think anything's taken enough damage that it can't sail until it sinks officially. So let's go to the next one, which is striking and then sinking. Okay. Striking is again based on that die roll of 4 or more with +1 for every extra hit that it has left. Well, this guy is vulnerable. He has no hits left. So on a 4, start pulling those off. On a 4, he's going to strike colors, even though he's really, really damaged. He does not strike. Okay, let's find other vulnerable ships. This guy is vulnerable, and he is also pretty much wrecked. He doesn't strike. Do you have any others here that are vulnerable? This guy, again, pretty much wrecked. Does not strike. You kind of wish you could do the sinking first, just not to waste movements. This guy has 4 hits left. I don't think he's actually vulnerable. Does that make sense? Yeah, he's not actually vulnerable. He just looked it, and I think I didn't fire at him because he was still vulnerable. No. That was this guy. And no? Huh. Curious. Alright, let's look at what might sink here. So this guy has 10 hits, and he has to sink less than his original rate. So that's on a 5 or less. He'll sink. He does not sink. He's still burning there. This guy's... Oh, I don't know what their original rate is. I can't see it. It's probably a 4, actually. Yeah, that guy's fine. Things are remarkably able to stay afloat and operable in this game. Okay, a 3 is going to be a sink for this ship. So it's not broken up, but it's not working anymore. And we're going to go with that as our solution for these. And I think I've covered all of the ships that can sink there. Now we're going to be moving into turn 5 after I do the cleanup of the broadsides. And I have to worry about the wind changing right at the beginning of the turn. I'll try to remember that by putting these over here with the wind. Right now I need a little bit of a break and a cool off. Okay. Well, we have to do the wind change, and I gotta find the table for that. I thought I had it here. It must be somewhere. There it is. And it's gonna go 1 point clockwise. Clocks go this way. That means everybody is kind of heading into the wind now, doesn't it? They're all beating. I don't know if it changes anything. This guy's beating as well. I don't think anybody's going to be turned up directly into the wind and in irons, but it removed this guy's in irons marker, which has to go somewhere adrift. Over here. Okay. Well, I guess it's time to start defining my command. I define those commands. The French, these 4 ships up here are all in command. Down here, I'm making this a command, and then I'm making the rear line a separate command. For the English, I made the division. Actually, this ship, who you wouldn't think is in command, can reach back to this formation. He's within 4 hexes. So the command split is basically the main body and then this kind of van up here that's gotten cut off. But I managed to keep one of my flaming wreck in command somehow. Initiative, the die roll was even, which means it goes to the Audacity, which is the English in this case. Lead English formation moved first. I wasn't sure I wanted to do that, but when I looked at this, the opportunities just didn't seem that great. They're probably not going to improve, though. Mainly turning to get around this wreck here. But this guy and this one exchanged fire, and that went heavily in the British favor. You can see they've got the French ship on fire. They were not able to get a rake, but still, both fired at the hull. The British have advantages in the hull. The British had the wind advantage. So overall, it was very good for them. The French managed to engage a couple more ships on this, just kind of swinging around. This one's almost crossing the T, but he didn't get a shot that way. Not quite sure why that is. Oh, because he had already fired that side or something. I don't know. Yeah, he had already fired. He had already fired the side that's facing him now, but he was able to slip his port side in against this and hit it, I think. I'm not sure. And even on fire he did some damage, and this one slipped in and fired as well. Now we're over to the second British formation, which is the majority of their ships, and then the French will get 2 shots at. Compared to SPQR, as sort of the biggest and meatiest of the great battles of history games, I would say this thing, moving a single ship, feels like moving a full command in SPQR. There's just so many opportunities for fire, for this, that, and the other. So many different checks. The combat table is complex enough. It really feels like moving a full formation. So, if you can imagine this, there aren't a whole lot of ships in this battle, maybe 10 on a side or something. You can see 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, 12 on the French side, a little bit more, I think, on the English. It's like that, a big battle with that many formations. Now, this is one of the smaller, not the tiny, there's some very tiny scenarios, but one of the smaller scenarios in this system. And you can imagine what something like Trafalgar is going to feel like. It's just, I think, going to blow me away in terms of the amount of effort that I have to put into this. It's painful. He's finding it difficult to keep his squadron together. He's got this unit sailing up and firing. This guy kind of coming down this way and firing. This one turning completely around, firing out its port and exchanging fire. And that was about an equal exchange. This one lining up with that. But then the rest of his fleet has moved down kind of into a line of battle to move directly into the French fleet. Now he's got the wind to his advantage in that. This is going to cause some trouble because he's going to have a lot of units out of command. Basically, this is going to be his command. This guy can't quite add this into his command. This is going to be out of command. These guys are going to be out of command. He doesn't have enough admirals to really take advantage of this kind of maneuverability, and that's going to be a problem. It sounds like it started raining again. Now we're on, looks like 2 more French squadrons or commands. This one here, and then the final rear squadron, to see what we can do with that. Now, in this case, everybody's beating, so we may want to try to reposition ourselves for the wind, which is what the English have done here for the moment. That wind change means the French pretty much turned away and are just going to try to run away from the English fleet. This is going to be a kind of weird situation. I didn't pump any more shot into this thing. You know, it's in pretty bad shape. It should sink, but it's still firing, and this is kind of this weird position in this game. Hey, do you still pump shot into something, especially if it's going to be your initial broadside, which I think would have been the case with the Guerre. Yeah, that would have been its initial starboard broadside. This guy has already fired his port, as has this one, so they can't really unload on that. If it stays out there, that'll be an issue. This ship is in pretty good shape, but it's on fire. Well, okay, maybe it's not in good shape, but it's got a lot of hull left, but it's on fire and it's got its manpower reducing. By the way, the manpower reduction, I tried to look at it, what you have to do to board a ship, and basically you can only do it to an immobile ship, one that's fouled or adrift in irons or something, and even then it gets an evasion chance unless it's fouled. Actually, I think it is a whole series of these things, but it's not a matter of, I'm just going to grapple something because I'm near it. You don't get that option. So anyway, this is turning into a running battle. I don't really like that situation, but I don't know what else to do. And I've got some French ships in the back that are going to come around and maybe cause some havoc to the English fleet if it chases. But it could, of course, turn and face those, and they're fairly weak, and cut them apart. So as we finish up turn 5 and moving into turn 6, and remember this only lasts 10 turns no matter what. Another French ship has flipped over, and this English ship has struck colors. Now it hasn't surrendered yet. It would have to actually be grappled to surrender. There's kind of a, if I go through that kind of effort to try to capture it, well, then I've got to stand and fight, and that's something I'm not really prepared to do. So it's struck colors, but it probably remains English. And we'll see what's going on. It doesn't look terribly good for the French, because although I've got this squadron, what's left of it, 2 ships, to maybe come from behind, these are not in bad shape, these English ships back here. They're fairly well off. You can see this is this guy got shot. He didn't get killed, but all right. Time for another break. Fatiguing game. So as we enter turn 6 here, to find our commands, I haven't rolled for initiative yet, nor have I rolled the out of command. We'll get to that in a moment. The French define 3 quick commands, and this is part of this one, and they're within 4. And then this one down here had to use just the leader's range. That works fine. For the English, they have a command here and a command back here, but these 3 ships are out of command, and I have to make rolls. Essentially, Audacity's 1, so I've got to roll a 1 or less, but I've got a -2 because of Bing being my overall commander. So, into 3. First one, second one, third one. So they're all remaining out of command. And that means they can't move next to a French ship, nor can they commit offensive fire unless they started next to one, like this guy. And they also can't use the special defensive fire, the sort of opportunity fire that's an optional roll. So that's some significant effects on sort of the middle of the British line, because I decided to point them the wrong way. Well, 2 of them. I gotta roll my initiative now and try to figure out what the hell I'm doing with my French. If I'm just running or if I'm trying to trap the Brits somehow, at least in their head. We get English initiative. They get to choose who goes first. I think it's to my advantage to take that myself, because you're more likely to line up a good shot over here. I also have this guy who has free shots, but then I hand the initiative to the French, essentially. Moving these guys forward may just be asking for something. So if the French want to run and they want to use their first initiative for that, I probably should let them. English open things up, trying to put a lot of firepower into the Sage. Both this ship and this ship. This one trying and succeeding actually in getting a bow rake, but getting no hull hits. However, they took defensive fire both passing by here and coming from here, so they actually took quite a bit more, mainly rigging damage on the Buckingham. It was partially damaged before as it sails in. The other ships kind of kept a distance. This one managed to fire. This one I think just forgot to. I'm trying to play it a little bit more rapidly, forgetting, not trying to think things through. If I screw things up, that's great, because honestly, things got screwed up a lot in these kind of battles. People made bad decisions. Bad decisions, not perfectly timed and judged, turns and stuff like that. That's what naval battles are about. And if you play it out as this thinking man's game where you're trying to optimize every single move, well, there's two factors. One, that's a little less realistic in terms of putting you in the captain's type of mindset. Two, though, and more important to me, is it's just less fun to play a game where I have to spend too much time figuring and thinking. Mike Nagel's other game that I'm familiar with, I don't know if he's done others, Ancient Battles Deluxe, suffers greatly from that for me, where I'm sitting there trying to puzzle out what the best place for this piece is. It feels like a geometric puzzle, and this one also does. In fact, it's about the only thing the two games have in common. And it's something I really do not enjoy playing, that kind of game. This one, however, I think if I put myself on a quick time limit, like 5 seconds on a decision on what to do, I'll be fine. I may not be making wise moves, but I'll be fine. Especially as I get more comfortable with the system. One of the problems is if I have to look things up, then it becomes more easy to sit down and try to reason out what I'm... Okay, so the French here, their main effect, I sailed down here and turned around heading down as well. Beyond facing more or less the way the rest of the ships are, is that they ended up transferring the commander from this ship to that ship. They needed to roll a 7 or higher to do so, and they did. This is a better ship, but with it on fire and taking a lot of hull hits, it's kind of iffy, and the fact that it's on fire means that he can transfer. So he went to the nearest undamaged ship, and that's this guy here, which is not as big, but that'll work. Alright, that puts us back on a British activation. Now for the Brits, they have to kind of decide what they want to do. Personally, I kind of like the idea of trying to activate some of the out-of-command ships, because again, I don't want to get caught in a trap with Bing. And Bing is a very cautious man, so he's particularly wary of that. Interesting situation here with this one out-of-command ship. Let's see if I can show you what was going on. His movement allowance would be a 5 because the wind's hitting him perfectly. But he had -2. Now he's running into a very, very crowded situation here. So 5 - 2 means he has 3 movement points. Just about anything he did would cause a collision. I mean, he could move here 1, swing in. That would cost him 2, 3 to head this way. He couldn't do that without colliding. He could go 1, 2, that would be a collision. But what he could do was back sails 1, 2, back sails 3. That's what happened. We had some firing go by. Ended up damaging this one. Even though he's on fire, he's still able to deal out a lot of damage. With the wind going in his favor, being British, he can do hull shots better than the French can. It's always a hard choice because clearly hull shots are the better thing to go with, but the French doctrine is to fire for the sails. So they get a +1 on that, and also in this particular case the wind is in favor of the British, as it all too often is, which means that there's a penalty for shooting at the hull for the French and a bonus for shooting at the rigging. So it's, you know, really a situation where you want to shoot at the rigging, but because of the odds, but you convince yourself, I've got to take some of his firepower away or whatever because he's so close. If you can keep this as a running battle, if the French turn and run away right away, I think rigging fire is probably a better move. Because you can still get the ship on fire that way, and that's in fact how this sucker is on fire. Now the question is, do the French want to go next, or do they want to let the British keep coming? I think the French are going to take a turn. So I found a solution to the French situation. What we end up doing is turning around from the wind so that we're now reaching, coming this way. And in a sense we actually have equal wind with the English now. As we're slicing this way and they're coming down. That looks really appealing. And the English choice is going to be to launch next their big wing, which probably can't get close, or another one of their out-of-command ships to maybe see if it can get a shot off. I got a bow rake on this one, but it didn't do much. I got one hull hit. They got one rigging hit on me with their chase. So the English shift forward with one of their out-of-command ships. The thought being, well, I can kind of get into a better position. But you got to remember, they can't offensive fire and they can't move next to the enemy. Well, they positioned themselves in a place where they took 2 broadsides, one a potential rake that didn't happen. This was all rigging fire. This ship is now in bad shape, -3 movement points. It's gotten itself so it's reaching now, but that only gives it 2 movement points next turn. So it's a badly hosed ship, and it's also on fire. One of the nice things about rigging hits is they actually are more likely to cause a fire, and that can degrade the performance of the ship greatly. So this was a big bonus for the French, although they used some first broadsides on that ship. They didn't launch a shot from this one, which may have actually been a mistake. So I don't think that's going to get another shot either. I'm trying to remember, these guys have moved. They've swung in there. Let me see. Yeah, no, I didn't declare the fire. I'll hold it. But that would be another first broadside. So I could probably pretty much cripple that ship if that's the case. Byng is getting himself in a lot of trouble here. Of course, historically, he got himself in about as much trouble as is possible. Now the question here is, do the French want to let the Brits go again? Moving forward, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This was a mistake. I probably should have slid those British ships forward. And the French are considering that they want to swing these guys around much as these guys did. You can see the French line has now built itself up in a position where they've actually got, like I said, at least as good a wind position as the English do, with the English driving down into them. You know, it's sort of a mixed fire situation. The French can take early shots, maybe with bow rakes, and then the English can cut across and maybe get aft rakes. So it's, I think, still advantageous for the English to be in this position. It's hard to tell. I have to get more used to the system to see how it all works out. But the French first fire hitting the rigging might do a lot of damage to these Brits. Now I've got to decide what to do with my Brits, and I kind of want to be careful here. I've already started shifting ships into position heading straight through, So I'm not sure that I want to say end up beating going across here to try to hit the tail end of that French position, although there are definite advantages to that. You could then see the French maybe, I don't know. Jeez, it's tough. So I really actually like the result of that, I think, better than just slicing through the line. Damn it. Isn't indeed to go after the French aft. Now I'm beating up the wind here, but I don't see much hope for these French forward units to be able to engage the rear of my fleet, because they too would then have to turn into a beating position to do much. So the French fleet is running quite quickly away, whereas the English are coming in to handle the already damaged portion of the French fleet. Bing may be able to save his career in his head. Well, it doesn't look like any ships are vulnerable. We move to the end of the turn. This is the beginning of turn 7 here. The one English ship that struck, and, well, they put out their fire, but they finally sunk. We only have one ship left on fire, this one, and it's in pretty decent shape, although it's slowly burning its way down. The rest of the fires have been put out. Right now the English have sunk 2 French ships, and we're at the total of 7 victory points, whereas the French have sunk 1 English worth 4. How's the rest of the situation? Well, I'd say this is not terribly in favor of either player. It's kind of a mess, and I like the tactical position the English have put themselves in on this one. Gonna load this one up. I know I'm making a lot of videos, but I think that's better than the long ones. People don't watch the whole long things anyway, and I think the people who do, actually probably a lot of them watch them in